My name is Melanie Nyhof, and I'm a developmental psychologist, and I work at Carthage College, which is located in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I studied English literature as an undergraduate, and the summer before my final year of university, I took a psychology course. And I talked with my professor and about my interests, especially kind of in the transition from the oral tradition of like Beowulf to kind of literacy and how that impact cognition. And he said, let's design a study. And then I spent some time working in a developmental psychology lab with preschoolers. That's kind of how I got into psychology and the cognitive science of religion. After university, I spent 1 year teaching English in China, but I've spent most of my time in Indonesia. So I've done research with children in the US and in Indonesia looking at children's God concepts from the ages of 4 to 6. And what I've found is that whether you have children in the US who are growing up Protestant or in the Latter-day Saints community, and children growing up in Indonesia attending Islamic schools or Catholic schools, at 4 years of age, they have very similar God concepts. So the way that we try to find out what children think about God is to present them with other scenarios or questions or little tasks. So some of it depends on kind of the region, the cultural region where we're working. We adapted that a bit to ask about God, but also about their teachers and other kinds of entities that they may be familiar with, like a gecko. So INSBS has been very generous and has given me 2 grants that have been influential in helping me kind of start and build a field site in Tanah Toraja. So it's a very death-centric culture, and the Torajans have very elaborate funerals. In Tanah Toraja, when a person dies, they often are not buried right away, but they are kept in the house for up to 2 years. And they're referred to not as dead, but as sick. And the reason why there's this kind of prolonged period of time between kind of biological death and the funeral is because funerals are expensive. It's like the cost of a small car. And there's pressure to kind of have these kinds of funerals, like to have a proper funeral in order to kind of appease the ancestors. So in my research, when we ask about what they believe continues after death, does the body still function? And what we found is that young children, already age 7, they're not confused about biological death. They can see with their own eyes that the person is not eating, even though they're being offered food, and they're not walking around, although they don't respond that the mind or the soul continues after death. We don't see those afterlife beliefs emerge until later, around age 11, and it's very prominent among adults. In the US, children, they're really sheltered from death. And so that's very different from in Tanah Toraja, where children are not sheltered. Children in Tanah Toraja, they are participating in almost all aspects of funeral ceremonies, where in the US, many children don't even attend funerals, and if they do, they may not even get to see the dead body, whereas in Tanah Toraja, they have a very intimate kind of relationship with death. And in addition, in kind of my recent field work, we asked children even just about kind of their experiences with animal death. And in one focus group with 10-year-olds, half of them had even killed a chicken with their own hands. So very different from what children in the US experience, where they may only have exposure to chickens, in the supermarket. I mean, my time in Indonesia has really been personally just transformational. I mean, I think doing research on death has prompted me to reflect on my own mortality and the mortality of those who I love. And I think I've become even more passionate about how important ritual is to the grief process. And so when I hear about friends, they're like, oh, we don't want to have a funeral. I'm like, it really is important. There are other ways to celebrate the life of a person. So looking toward other cultures for ideas about how we might enrich our own culture in the US, I think has been really influential, just personally.